We need to be purpose-driven, but we can't do that until we rediscover our purpose. These people don't know why they're alive. Your obedience is prolonging this nightmare. Libertarians need to stand apart from this. The time to fight back is now. Don't give in to this evil. Just proceed ever more boldly against it.
Picture this. Innocent people in the Middle East. They're having dinner. A bomb is dropped on their house, and they're all killed. What's the problem with this? It's being done by white men. I am Jeremy Kaufman, the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton and candidate for United States Senate. It is time to diversify the murderous military-industrial complex. We need to make the nukes gay. And that's why I'm running for office. Like my fellow Democrats and Republicans, I will support every war. I will support stealing billions of dollars from Americans to kill innocent people, but we are gonna make it so gay. It will go down in the history books. We will say never have so many genders and so many races killed innocent people. Let's bomb Yemen, but let's make sure a rainbow of skin colors are dropping those bombs. These are gonna be the gayest transist murders the United States has ever performed. That's what I stand for as the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton, and that's what I'll do once elected to the United States Senate. I'm Jeremy Kaufman, and I'm gay for this message. I'm serious.
Paul was in New Hampshire today to plug for conservative support. In Massachusetts, he appealed to the liberal voter. As Marcus Jones found out, the libertarian agenda appeals to both attitudes.
When seeking office is done for personal aggrandizement, money, or power, it becomes useless if not harmful.
Now, I happen to be a libertarian because of the compassionate nature of the result.
If we continue in this line, we will have a successful libertarian revolution in this country.
When political action is taken for the right reasons, it's easy to understand why compromise should be avoided. It's also become clear why progress is best achieved by working with coalitions, which bring people together without anyone sacrificing his principles.
We are the inheritors of the most brilliant, beautiful political philosophy ever devised by man.
We are Ron Paul revolutionizing the Libertarian Party.
Your job is to take care of the remnant.
Why is the Libertarian Party not synonymous with the anti-war cause in America? That's a shame.
And the party's been widely irrelevant forever.
We love liberty, and we're here because we hate injustice.
I'm going to make powerful alliances with anybody who's willing to.
The message to them needs to be, the system can't work.
The smartest thing your party can do is embrace the Mises type.
We're here to help.
Support the people that are doing the work.
We will ally with anyone who agrees what is going on needs to stop.
Who says we can't make coalitions on single issues?
End the lockdowns, end the wars, end the Fed, end the banker bailouts, end the corporate bailouts. If we can agree on all of those, that's important enough to put anything else aside.
We are here to save mankind.
My priority is advancing liberty because I live in a tyrannical lockdown state.
The Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party has a job on their hands.
God bless the Mises Caucus.
The Mises Caucus is just crushing it right now.
This is our year to do another Ron Paul revolution.
If the LP has a purpose, it's not to put people to sleep. It's to wake them up.
This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.
Fight all of this government tyranny, compromise nothing, grow a fucking backbone, and fight for liberty. That's our message.
I'm glad to see the revolution is continuing.
I wondered, I thought the Libertarian Party would be for Mises. I didn't know they had to have another caucus.
People who came all the way up from the valley, which in case you guys don't know, that's like a 9 or 10 hour drive if you wanted to drive it. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. It means everything for you guys to be here. And if you weren't a delegate to state, you need to sign up at takehumanaction.com because that is how you get involved with the Mises Caucus here in Texas. That is how we're going to do amazing things here. So make sure you sign up at takehumanaction.com. I am going to be on the ballot tomorrow. If you are a delegate for the state party, please vote for me for vice chair. Agatha, who is one of our state organizers, is running for the secretary position. And just so you guys know, she's not able to be here right now because there was a situation and we're getting it taken care of. But please keep her in your thoughts and vote for her tomorrow for secretary. And then even though she's not a member of the Mises Caucus, Kate Prather is one of the best things to happen to LP Texas. She has turned our accounting and treasury around. She's helped us raise a ton of money, and she has helped get the state party back in order when it came to fundraising and our financial situation. So please vote for her for treasurer tomorrow. And then if you guys haven't yet, Patrick Mitchell, Patrick, raise your hand. Please come talk to Patrick if you would like to be a national delegate and you did not sign up ahead of time. Now, mind you, you need to be affiliated with the state party and you need to be a registered voter. So Patrick, one more time, stand up, come find Patrick if you would like to be a national delegate. Again, you have to be affiliated with the state party and you have to be a registered voter for that to be able to happen. So come talk to him. Also, if you are a delegate, please come talk to Patrick. We have a couple of petitions that we need you to sign so we can get them up on the floor tomorrow. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Clint Russell. He is the host for Liberty Lockdown and a general badass. So without further ado, Clint Russell.
Texas Mises Caucus, what's up? Well, welcome to the event. Thank you guys for turning out. It means the world to me. It's incredible to see. There's another event across the street if you didn't know. And I'm pretty sure we're dwarfing them right now. So this is mind-blowing to me. Welcome to the LP Mises Caucus Texas event, AKA the Eric July, Scott Horton, Dave Smith, and who the fuck is that guy show. Anyways, I'm Clint Russell. I am the host of Liberty Lockdown. Thank you. And my story's kind of weird. So if you already know it, forgive me for boring you. I'll be quick. My dad found libertarianism in the 1970s, and I was born in the 80s. So I am one of the rare second-gen libertarians, where I was actually raised by my mom, for the most part, and my stepdad, but I would spend 1 weekend a month with my biological dad. And he would take me on these four-hour car rides from San Diego to Ridgecrest, California, which is where he ran this nightclub. And on these incredibly autistic car rides, he would tell me about the time value of money when I was 5 years old. Are you starting to get the picture as to why I'm so strange? So he talked about the foundational principles of liberty, what the founding fathers believed in, why it was so hard fought, why it was so fleeting, and why it meant more than anything. I was essentially indoctrinated into kind of a religious fervor around liberty. And I know a lot of people, they come to libertarianism as they get older. I had it built into me very young. So I basically, this is just a complete projection of my childhood into the future. But I didn't actually set out to do any of this. So for those that aren't familiar with any of my backstory, I was a private money mortgage lender, entrepreneur, brokered a couple $100 million, was doing great financially, really enjoying my life, had no intention of being involved with the Libertarian Party, was just wishing them well and voting for them when they ran a candidate that I liked. That's it. And I didn't want to be involved, to be perfectly blunt. I was most interested in just benefiting my own life, kind of the agorist mentality of like looking after my loved ones and growing my own foundation of economic freedom. And then the lockdowns happen. And I'm sure many of you feel the way I did, is that I was radicalized tremendously in that moment. And the reason I got engaged is because the Libertarian Party was not delivering what I felt was necessary in that moment, the most important moment, when literally no one was defending liberty. I relied on the Libertarian Party to do that for me in that moment, and they didn't. So instead of being a victim about it and pretending as if, I'm powerless to change anything, I started to speak out. A lot of people did. And in 2 years, I went from being an anonymous fat chick in a bikini on Twitter to going public and letting people know who I was, and fortunately had these legends in front of me that kind of paved the way and helped lift me up, and that's my story. So I know a lot of people have also felt increasingly radicalized, and I use that word intentionally because I've been radicalized. So I hope that's okay. I hope it's permissible that we're allowed to talk as if we've been radicalized, because our liberty has been stripped from us almost entirely for 2 years. If you aren't fucking radicalized, what are you paying attention to? So if they think that they can do this to us and that we're just going to stand by and allow it to happen, they have another thing coming. And as far as I'm concerned, the Libertarian Party will be the vehicle for that message to push back. And the Mises Caucus is the front line of that defense. So. So the main gist of my belief system over the past 2 years has been that the reason the world has fallen apart is because courageous, principled people kind of didn't stand up. We didn't speak out. We allowed people like Fauci and other, technocratic elites to dictate what the policy will be in a crisis. And people that actually have principles that value human liberty were cowed by the masses that were too afraid to identify the actual danger that sat atop the immediate danger, which was COVID. And I think that's the main thing I want to imbue in you guys, is that it's really vital that if we're going to be kind of the vanguard of liberty, and even we aren't good enough to speak out when the crisis strikes, when no one has any real clue as to the danger that we're facing, well, then no one's going to do it, obviously. It's so politically challenging to have that courage to do that in that moment when you don't know. We didn't know. 2 years ago, I didn't know exactly the viral load and transmissibility of COVID. I just, from principle, I stood up immediately and I said, you cannot take my rights away. You can't do it. Unfortunately, they did, though. Despite the fact that I was saying it, they still did. And this is why I'm becoming politically engaged, is because having my own personal stance and outlook is not necessarily adequate. By the way, am I too close to the mic? Am I like popping? Is all right? All right, cool. So from the Republican to the Democrat side, there is no likely defense or prosecution that's going to come for the people that abused us over the past 2 years. Let's be honest. They sat alongside. Many of them propagated the same nonsensical messages as the worst of the worst. Trump allowed it to happen, whether he was involved in the orchestrating of it or not. As far as I'm concerned, that he failed in that opportunity, and he's probably going to run again. Let's be honest. So, do you want to be represented by that? Someone who allowed you to be locked in your house for over a year? Like, no, thank you. I don't have any interest in seeing you again, ever. To be honest, he was better than most presidents in my lifetime, but he still allowed me to be locked in my fucking house. So, bye bye. I don't want to see you ever again. I say it with some levity, but let's be honest. There's a 22-point IQ drop on average for toddlers because of masking. That's serious. That's not okay. That's almost like war crime level stuff, what we've done to our kids over the past 2 years. You had a 30% rise in drug overdoses, a 50% rise in suicidal ideation in kids, in children. If your blood doesn't boil hearing these statistics, I don't know what it'll take. I mean, it's incredible what we allowed to happen. And we allowed it. I always look at every aspect of my life as if I am the dictator of my life. I will be no man's victim. So I blame myself. And I take that weight on every day. And maybe it's too much to do. Maybe that's why I come across as so unbelievably radicalized, but whatever. I look at every injustice in the world, and I carry some of that with me. And when it happens in my own backyard to people that I know, to their children, well, I get activated. So I want to encourage everybody that's here to speak out while we still can. Obviously, the suppression of speech online, you've seen it from COVID, where if you were to talk about early treatment, you had people like Dr. McCullough, Dr. Pierre Corey. Many of these people courageously spoke out, a handful of them. And what did they get in return? They got their licenses pursued, many of them. Or they were banned from Twitter or YouTube. It's like, and now we're having that exact same mentality carried forward with any sort of dissent when it comes to the potential for World War III. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal. And I just think that if we're going to have any chance of a viable anti-war movement, we have to be able to speak and be the dissenters when no one else is willing. So I think that the lessons that we learned from the past 2 years is that if we aren't willing to speak out when it matters most, no one will. And if World War III is the potential risk coming down the pipe, well, then we better be willing to speak out, because you will not have another chance. I know it sounds, I'm taking the room in a really dark place, and I apologize, but that's the truth. It's the truth. Nuclear war is no joke. War with a nuclear Russia is no joke. And we have politicians that stand on Capitol Hill today talking very flippantly about no-fly zones. We all know what a no-fly zone means. It means American weaponry and American troops shooting down Russian troops. Where does that go? Do you think Putin's just going to be like, I get it, it's cool? No, he's not. So I just want to encourage you guys to continue to stay activated. Obviously, you already are. You're here. So I could probably stop preaching to the choir. But I just wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. It has been the thrill of my life. I honestly believe that the Ron Paul revolution, which inspired me so much in the mid-2000s to believe that there was a potential home for libertarianism, I get to be kind of a voice in the next version of it. How cool is that? How cool is that? It's the honor of my life, and I don't say that lightly. It is the honor of my life to be able to do this with you guys. And Murray Rothbard talked in For New Liberty about how the 1970s were the most fertile ground for the libertarian revolution. Murray, look at us now. We have very fertile ground. And it's funny because he talked a lot about the disillusion in the political establishment in the 1970s. Boy, disillusion, that's the name of the game right now. He talked about inflation. Boy, we're catching up with you. And then obviously the anti-war sentiment from Vietnam versus our war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq. Scott Horton will tell you about the rest of them. I feel like this is the second best time, and I think it's actually, no disrespect to Murray Rothbard, I think he was wrong. There's no way he could have known. There's no way he could have known how crazy shit was going to get. But this is the most fertile time. This is our opportunity to take that torch of liberty that Ron Paul lit and Murray Rothbard lit all those years ago, that exists within me today, that exists within everyone in this room today, that will not be extinguished as long as we're breathing. That's incredible. I'm honored to be a part of this room. Thank you, guys.
Clint Russell, everybody, and if you haven't subscribed to Clint Russell's podcast, it is Liberty Lockdown, so please find it on your favorite podcatcher. Alrighty, well, next up, some of you may know him, some of you may have talked to him tonight. He is the legend, Scott Horton, author of Fool's Errand and Enough Already. And he needs no introduction. Get on up here, Scott.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm not as tall as him. Taller, but I'm not. All right. I know y'all think I have a good memory, but actually, this is my memory.
So, tonight's lecture is about the war in Somalia. I'm not really going to do that to you guys, but it is now America's longest war, longer than the war in Afghanistan, and it is a horrible war, and there's a brand new famine kicking in there this year, so should pay attention to it. It is very important, and we cover it for you at antiwar.com in case you're interested. But that's not what the rest of my talk is going to be about, I promise. I'm actually, I got to say this. As many of you know, I'm closely tied to a couple of nonprofit institutions, my own little libertarian institute, and of course, antiwar.com. But those are both 501c3 nonprofit organizations, and that means that my appearance here tonight has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with either of those organizations. I say that as my magic spell to keep the IRS stormtroopers away. You understand? Everybody understands. Good. Okay. Hope the IRS understands. All right. Now, 3 cheers for the Mises Caucus, huh? Yeah. And seriously, thank you all, and especially the volunteers, the organizers, you know, Luke and all the rest of the guys in charge of the Texas Mises Caucus, and all of y'all's hard work in making all of this happen. It's easy for me to make phone calls and say, do this and do that different and whatever, but you guys are the ones doing the work. So I'm really grateful, and you guys, I know the rest of the audience here is really grateful for the effort for you guys leading the Mises Caucus in Texas here. So round of applause for those guys. You know. I know my buddy Mike came with me today. We're old friends from when we were kids. And, you know, my story about Mike is that he always assumed that the Libertarian Party was just full of a bunch of Ron Paul guys. And then he was very disappointed to find out that that was not true. But then I told him, hey man, there's this new effort on. It's the Mises Caucus. And basically what it is it's all a whole bunch of us Ron Paul revolution types all joining the Libertarian Party all at once so that we can make your previous mistaken assumption finally the truth. The Libertarian Party to represent the libertarian movement and the Ron Paul revolution in this country. And then Mike said to me, hell yeah, let's go, I got shotgun. And he's here tonight, and his last name's Doyle. You can vote for him to be a national delegate. He's going to come with us to Reno and help make Angela the chair and put our guys on the LNC, all right? All right. So, now here's the thing about the Mises Caucus that is, you know, not that unique, I guess, among, you know, libertarians going back through history, of course. We're all policy wonks on our own particular issues, you know. And libertarians have always been very concerned with war. Many of you know that a major impetus of the beginning of certain factions of the libertarian movement happened in the split between the Young Americans for Freedom when half the group walked out over the Vietnam War. Those were the libertarians. The Young Americans for Freedom stayed the conservatives and stayed pro-war. That's where we come from. And of course, as Clint was just mentioning, price inflation in the 1970s can make a libertarian out of a socialist, right, during that time. The stagflation, as they called it. Here, massive inflation and high unemployment, right? And just an absolute disaster for that whole decade long. And so libertarians, of course, have always been great on all of these things. And yet at the same time, I think it's true, we can all agree the movement and the party sometimes loses focus. So with the Mises Caucus, what we're trying to do is really crystallize the idea that we are, well, as one Twitterer put it recently, to be pro-liberty is not enough. One must be actively anti-government. And that is what we are. And we're against the worst things that our government does first. And that means, of course, first and foremost, America's world empire and our state of permanent war in the Middle East and, of course, now in Europe and around the world. That is our highest priority. After that, as you guys know, we could all tick them off. Any remnants of the lockdowns, vaccine passports, or any of the restrictions left over from the COVID hysteria, central banking, and destroying once and for all the Federal Reserve System in the United States of America. And then, of course, all the corruption, as you know, this is the kind of thing that's surprising to a liberal when they find out, and even to conservatives, I guess, that we are so free market that we are not necessarily pro-business. We're happy to see a firm fail. We're happy to see a New York bank crash and burn. Lehman Brothers, huh? Yeah, we don't give a damn about that. We are against bailouts and corporate welfare even more than the liberals are, because liberals have their favorite companies that they want to receive corporate welfare to boost environmental concerns or whatever theirs are. We don't believe in that. We really believe in laissez-faire, and that means we want to kick the richest, most powerful corporations in America, the military-industrial complex, and the Wall Street bankers and hedge funds off of welfare first. And of course, that includes all the insurance companies, the hospital companies, and all of the other pharmaceutical firms and everybody involved in the healthcare industry, which is the #1 cause of our insane healthcare costs in this country, makes it impossible for people to take care of their family, which is probably, I think you would all agree, the #1 cause of people believing in socialism in this country. Because I can't pay my wife's medical bills, somebody's got to, right? Or what are we going to do? We're just going to throw everybody away? And so, of course, as we know, it's the middle of the road leads to socialism, as Mises says. What we need is a free market in healthcare. Then we'll be able to afford to take care of ourselves and take care of our families. The conservatives are not going to win that fight for us. That's on us. And we can do that. We can tell that message, and we can preach that message and help the American people understand that socialism is not the solution to our healthcare costs. And then you guys know the rest. On down the line of the litany of what needs fixing in this country, the militarization of the police and the war on drugs and all of the assaults on our Fourth and Fifth Amendment, the NSA and FBI and CIA, for that matter, domestic spying on our bank accounts and our emails and our web addresses and everything else that we're doing, all the Snowden revelations and the Vault 7 and all the rest. This is what's got to be repealed, and we all know it. And the thing of it is, too, is the American people know it, too. And I'm going to ruin something Dave was maybe going to say in his talk tonight, which is he went and did an interview with Glenn Beck today, the former right-wing hawk. And I say former because today he said, I was so wrong about that. I was wrong to support the war in Iraq. I was wrong to support the Patriot Act. As the great Colonel Douglas McGregor says, retired Army colonel, now right-wing anti-war guy, he says, you know, time is a greater winner of arguments than reason. And here we are in 2022, and who can say that the Federal Reserve smooths out the boom and bust cycle in our society? Who can say that the war protects our security and spreads freedom to the darkened, unenlightened people of the world and all of these things? Nobody believes it anymore. It's just not true. And it's been proven all false now. And who are the ones who are left proven right? We are. We're the ones who got it right the whole time. And so, that brings me, well, I got a lot of things here. I want to talk about the Ron Paul Giuliani moment. Now, everybody remembers what happened there, right? Is Ron Paul stood up to the bully, the former New York City Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. And Giuliani said, I demand you take that back. And Ron Paul said, no, I don't think so, and told the truth twice in a row. But remember what it was. He was feeding the American people the most bitter pill of all. He said, look, the terrorists don't attack us and kill our people by the thousands because they hate how innocent and free and wonderful we are. They hate us essentially because of Bill Clinton's foreign policy, bombing Iraq from bases in Saudi Arabia for 8 years long. That's what got our towers knocked down. Now, this is the most bitter pill. George Bush said they hate us because we're great and love our moms. Now you're telling me we actually did something wrong? We, meaning the U.S. government, did something to cause this problem? Now, That is a bitter pill. Nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody's mom and dad wanted to hear that, but they did hear it. They heard it from Ron Paul. And why? Because they could tell that he respected them enough to simply tell them the truth, no matter what it was. And as he said to Rudy Giuliani that night, if we ignore the reality of how we get into these wars, then we do that at our own peril. This is what gets our people killed. When you think that we can just go around the world doing whatever we want and we'll never have to suffer the consequences. These are the consequences. And that confrontation is what set off the Ron Paul revolution. And it was incredible. For those of us who lived through 2008, we'll never forget it. And for those of you who didn't, I highly recommend to you, you can find it online easy. It's called For Liberty, How Ron Paul Watered the Withered Tree of Liberty. And it shows exactly, it's like an hour and a half long, and I swear to God, it just gets better and better and better all the way through this documentary. And it just shows how tens of millions of Americans said, this is it. Here, this guy's a conservative Texas Republican. He says, I can be anti-war. I don't have to move left at all. If you like your identity, you can keep it. You just don't have to believe in this crap anymore. It's not believable, is it? And tens of millions of Americans followed Ron Paul from that instant on because he had the respect and the decency to simply tell them the truth. That is our North Star. That is what we are about, telling the American people the truth. And then they'll know what to do, which is also what we want them to do because we've thought this stuff through. And so, you know, that brings me to another point, which is when Dave Smith or Spike Cohen or Jeff Deist or I or any of these other libertarians are guests on the Kennedy Show on Fox Business News, Fox Business Channel, which I've been on there. Thanks to Dave hooking me up with that. I've been on there numerous times since last fall. And I think you'll notice when you watch that show, a lot of times what it is, she has the panel. Sometimes it's a one-on-one interview, but usually we have a panel discussion, a Republican, a Democrat, and the Libertarian. And I'm not taking credit, I'll give it to the rest of the guys, but yeah, it's true for me too. We blow them the hell away every single time. Every single time. And that's because all they care about is their Republican, Democrat, you know, consultant, pollster talking points about each other. But we really care about this stuff. And we really know about this stuff. And so, you know, I might, you know, cite names and dates or whatever, but Dave will sit there and explain serious, like deep economic theory. It's Spike Cohen with his great quips and whatever it is. We're just doing laps around these guys, and they don't know what to do about it. When I was on there a week ago, I watched the replay later, and the conservative kept going, oh, yeah, because I was saying, you know what I was saying? I was saying we need a gold standard so we can't fight these wars anymore. And he was going, yeah. And the Democrat was going, huh? And like literally twisting her face around in dissonance, trying to figure it out, right? So this is the advantage that we have, just like Ron Paul. We actually really care about this stuff. We spent years poring over this stuff, trying to figure out what is really the right solution for the most freedom and the less harm for the most people right now and not later, right? And so that's why we blow him away. And that's why Ron Paul did so much better than all the other Republicans once he got that spotlight on him finally. Became a superstar, and that's what we're going to do, of course, with Dave when he runs. And that's what that's Mises Caucus. That's what we're going to do with the whole Libertarian Party. Is we're going to make this thing really a force to be reckoned with in American society. Now, here's just a little bit of advice, and I'm proud that Spike Cohen has plagiarized this from me. I gave it to him. And I've seen him, he gives a way better speech about this than I do, but it's a thing I came up with. You hear this all the time in all different contexts. It's a cliche. I don't know where it originally meant. Let's say mind the gap. So my version of minding the gap is there's this big gap, obviously, between the narrative, whether we're talking about COVID or whether we're talking about the wars or whether we're talking about the police state or anything else where this government is claiming to be our security force and our benefactor and guarantor of our safety. And we take that, there's this gap between that narrative and the truth. Simple as that. And also, as you guys have noticed over and over again, there's a real gap between the truth, as in what's really going on here, and what's right. And so that, again, is our advantage. We just tell the truth and show how wrong it is what our government has been doing and just how thin their claims to be our security force truly are in the face of the reality. And that's where we have the advantage. And it's like that on whether we're talking about guns or whether we're talking about gold or whether we're talking about drugs or whether we're talking about wars. Again, we're the ones who thought this through. And we're the ones who, whether we're talking with leftists or whether we're talking with conservatives and right-wingers and populists, we can find what they are somewhat libertarian on, where they somewhat agree with us, and we can bring them the rest of the way to us. Again, all we got to do is tell them the truth. All we got to do is say, if you like your identity, you can keep it. You just need to be consistent. If you're good on capitalism, well, you have to be good on war. You can't have gold money and a free market and a world empire at the same time. You can't get rid of the IRS when you're remaking the Middle East. Everybody knows that. And for leftists, if you're arguing with a leftist, the same reasons that you oppose the war on drugs, for the ridiculous economics of it, for all the harm that it causes to poor and minorities, well, that's the same reason to be against gun control. Who do you think goes to prison just for having a gun? Poor people and minorities, the exact kind of people that leftists want to protect. And they have an imagination that it's all a bunch of right-wing rednecks are going to have to suffer their gun control, but that's just not true. And when you explain it to them out loud in English for the first time, they know that you're right about that. They know that you're right about that. Who goes to jail just for having a gun? A guy who's on probation just for having some pot. And who's that? A poor guy from a minority, and a poor part of town. That's who ends up getting rounded up and ends up literally doing time in the penitentiary for simple possession of contraband in what's supposed to be a free society. It's insane. So we attack the left from the left. We attack the right from the right, without moving an inch, because we're already better than them on all the things that they're good on. All we got to do is tell them the truth, and that's how we mind the gap. All right, now I have to say real quick, Denise is here. I met Denise. Where are you, Denise? Are you here? Okay, great. Oh, there you are. Great. So Denise is here. She's going to be introducing a resolution tomorrow for the Texas State Libertarian Party to endorse and support the Defend the Guard legislation. Okay? And we have a guy. His name is Brian. Oh man, I forgot it. Was it Brian Slayton? Is a Republican member of the House who's introduced this legislation for us in the last year. We can work with him, we can support him, and we can help him to lobby the other members of Congress. For those who aren't familiar, this would be a law that says that the federal government cannot have Texas National Guard troops for foreign missions other than training, but for any actual mission overseas in war without an official declaration of war from the U.S. Congress. Which we all know they'll never do, right? And let me tell you, this is important, okay? The media is paying big attention to this. This is a huge issue. The Pentagon sends generals to argue against it in front of the Texas state legislatures to try to threaten them that they'll get their money withheld. You're familiar with the News Hour on PBS at night. They did a 25-minute segment all about Defend the Guard and the threat that it poses to American militarism. They're taking it very seriously. And why? Because it's led by combat veterans from the 21st century terror wars. Okay? And to coin a phrase, they've had enough already. And they're serious about this now, and they're really pushing hard. So when Denise introduces this thing tomorrow, she's going to need our support, right? Okay. And now you guys know that's my issue is war. And it is the movement's issue. You know, the guys at Cato, despite some of their bad reputation or what have you, the guys at Cato have been great on the terror wars, all terror war long. Doug Bondo and Ted Carpenter are the best of the best. All the guys at the Future Freedom Foundation, at the Foundation for Economic Education, at the Independent Institute, at the Mises Institute, LouRockwell.com, and of course now my newer Libertarian Institute. All of us are good on war, all of us, and this whole time too. Libertarians have owned the URL antiwar.com since 1995. Okay? This is our issue. And it's past due time to make this the Libertarian Party's most important signature issue, opposing American militarism. And I've got good news for you. There's a ceasefire in Yemen right now. Yeah. It's the worst thing going on in the world today. And they do have a ceasefire. There have been some violations, but it's supposed to last through the month of Ramadan. And the sock puppet American and Saudi stooge, who is supposed to be the President Mansour Hadi, has now renounced his title of president and has, so then that no longer can be the mission of the Americans and the Saudis to reinstall him in power. And so that's a huge change and a possible path to peace there. So this is something really important. Which brings me back to telling the truth about this and centering this issue. Now, you guys are familiar with Dave Smith's many, many great appearances on the Joe Rogan Show. And hopefully those are just the first few of many more to come. But how many of you guys saw the clip of Dave talking about Yemen on the Joe Rogan Show a couple of months ago, huh? So it got more than 1 million views on YouTube. This is the clip. He's got an exclusive deal with Spotify now, but he takes a clip and puts it on YouTube for promotional material. So out of his 3-hour interview with Dave last time, the 10-minute clip that he chose was Dave explaining the war in Yemen. Now, I'm totally making up these numbers, but I know that you'll agree with me anyway. Out of the 12 million people who saw that show or heard that show, about 5% of them really already know what libertarians are about. Love us or hate us, okay? Probably about another 10% think that they know what libertarianism is, but they probably have only a pretty thin grasp. And then the other 85% really don't know anything about it, right? Maybe they think it's a Republican that smokes pot, which we do smoke pot, but we're not Republicans. Or maybe they think, Penn Jillette or, something like that. No offense, Penn Jillette. But mostly they don't know. So here's Joe Rogan with this huge audience. He's the most important man in media in the world. And he says to Dave Smith, he goes, well, what's this libertarian stuff about? And Dave goes, well, we're anti-war. And he goes, all right, yeah, but, what else do you hate? And he goes, imperialism and militarism. And then Joe Rogan says a little while later, he goes, libertarian. So you're a libertarian, Mr. Libertarian. So what's this chip on your shoulder about anyway? And Dave goes, the war in Yemen, Joe. So now you have 10 million people who just got introduced to libertarianism by my man here. And what did they learn? What did they learn? We're anti-imperialists, Joe. That's what they learned. We're anti-war. The war in Yemen, the most, because that's the worst. And that's what they got to learn about us. And while at the same time, there was plenty of context to understand, Dave's not a leftist. Dave is a capitalist. Dave is a hard money guy. Dave wants to end the Fed. Dave is a libertarian. There ain't no anti-Americanism here, just anti-American militarism. And it scored. And frankly, that clip of Dave talking about Yemen on YouTube, that is the most publicity and prominence that catastrophe for the last 7 years has gotten in the last 7 years, okay? It's the biggest thing that's happened to push that story forward. That's the future of the Libertarian Party led by the Mises Caucus. And now, as Clint said, there's really a threat of World War III here. And I really try not to be an alarmist on this stuff because the alarmists are almost always wrong. And guys, I'm not predicting a full-scale war or any kind of direct war between America and Russia right now. I'm not saying that. But I don't think that changes the fact that we are closer to thermonuclear war, a full-scale general nuclear war with Russia than at any time since 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And someone on Twitter the other day said to me, how do you figure? I don't know, we had this huge kind of proxy war in Vietnam. Yeah, but Vietnam wasn't right on Russia's western border, 400 miles from Moscow. There's a real danger here. And, of course, the Republicans' line is that Joe Biden's weakness is what has provoked this problem, and it's his weakness that's failing to resolve it. and as Clint said, in sometimes the most grotesque ways, proposing a no-fly zone, which, as Clint said, would mean American planes shooting down Russian planes and Russian planes shooting down American planes. It would also mean America being forced then at that point to hit anti-aircraft positions inside Russia. Because again, we're talking about a conflict on their western border, 5,000 miles east of Washington, D.C. And if we're going to have a no-fly zone over Ukraine, we got to take out anti-aircraft missiles inside Russia. That means we all die in a thermonuclear war. And that's the best the Republicans can do. But that's not our criticism. Our criticism of the Biden administration is that they have been reckless, that they refused to negotiate in good faith before this conflict broke out, and for the past 60 days have refused to negotiate in good faith with the Russian government in an attempt to solve this. You know, the last time our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, spoke to the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, was on February the 15th. It's April the 8th today. This is treason against America, against all of mankind. Not on behalf of a foreign power, unless you count the nuclear missiles as the foreign power. They're the only ones who benefit the increased risk of their impending use. So that's it. As Clint said, all hands on deck. There's nothing else more important than the world. The war in Yemen may actually be winding down, while here we have the potential for a Yemen-style catastrophe to take place across the entire face of the earth. And that would mean, by the way, a nuclear war with Russia would mean the number of people who died in World War II would all die on the first day. 60, 70 million people on the first day. And then everybody else would starve to death after that from the nuclear winter. So, in order to do our small part, it is important to do. Let's work together to send the Mises Caucus group to Reno so we can appoint our chair, Angela McArdle, to help lead this Libertarian Party, so we can make the Libertarian Party a force in this society to be reckoned with, to put foreign policy first, and the other of the worst catastrophes that our government is inflicting on the people of the world and the people of this country, and really make a change and work toward a freer and a peaceful society in the future. Thank you.
Scott Horton, everybody, one more time. Awesome. Appreciate everything you guys do here. So, next up, we got Eric July. He is a major contributor over at Blaze TV. He is also the vocalist for the band Backwards and bringing the fight of liberty to the culture front through comics and music. So, please, Eric July.
So, believe it or not, I got a call from Tom. It was Tom Woods. Obviously, we all love Tom Woods here, right? He's amazing. So he calls me and he's like, yeah, these guys have been trying to get in contact with you. Would you like to do this event? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm in the area. I'm from here. Let's do it. What he neglected to tell me was that I was going to be speaking. I didn't really find out about that till probably the day before. Like, oh, we got this time slot for you to speak for. I was like, oh, shit. So, yeah, I'm going to bullshit my way through this, so y'all going to have to bear with me. But first and foremost, I know I'm not as visible because I'm so involved in so many other things. But I do want to give a big shout out and a big thanks to the Mises Caucus. Because when I do all of my work and people that bring up like the Libertarian Party, I'm always bringing up, of course, the Mises Caucus of if there's a group of individuals that you're going to want to follow and want to keep tabs on that actually value liberty, of course, you're going to want to keep up with the Mises Caucus. And I think it's so important that they understand that because you guys rile up the right people. The people that I'm going to speak about as honestly as I can. I'm going to take this opportunity because I haven't really had a chance to say this stuff sort of publicly. But before I get to that, I just want to give everybody that doesn't know of me kind of what my story was, because I know a lot of folks were birthed out of the Ron Paul, and as much as I love them, that was not my introduction to liberty. I am from here, from this area, South Dallas, actually Oak Cliff area, born and raised. And, you know, coming up, being a knucklehead, coming up, you know, thinking I'm a leftist, Shea shirt wearing dipshit, and not really understanding anything of which I was talking about. So really what led me to liberty, I went to the University of Memphis right out of college on a track and field scholarship. And again, this is when I call myself being politically active, like we often see a lot of blue-haired young people are. And I was losing a lot of arguments because I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And that sent me sort of down this rabbit hole. It wasn't necessarily the ideas, it wasn't reason, it was the shame that I felt in being owned by these people that were far more knowledgeable on these subject matters than I was. The subject that was very important to me was, of course, economics. I love to make money. I think a lot of folks that are certainly in our communities really value like capitalism, despite them not knowing actually what it was. So economics was my sort of introduction to just wanting to learn about liberty. And I was still stuck in this box. You have to understand, considering my upbringing, I always cared so much about like these quote unquote black issues. So I, even from the economic standpoint, I wanted to learn about the black economists. And thank God I stumbled across the likes of Thomas Sowell, and of course, rest in peace. And of course, rest in peace, Dr. Walter E. Williams. And obviously reading and watching The State Against Blacks and, you know, basic economics and reading that, I mean, you're talking about my whole world was flipped upside down. You could read probably basic economics in the first couple of pages, where Thomas Sowell he discusses, I forget who it was someone in Great Britain talking to the USSR, and they were asking them, hey, how do you manage this sort of economic, like, hey, how do you ensure that these people food? And I can't remember who it was. They said, we just don't. We don't ensure it. And people still yet have food. You hear Walter Williams talking about potato farmers in Idaho or whatever it was, trying to get potatoes to New Yorkers. Trust me, Idaho folk don't give a damn about people in New York. Not at all. However, they wanted to make a buck. And their greed, of course, had them going over to New York and, of course, selling potatoes to these folk in New York that wouldn't have otherwise got them. And learning about those sorts of aspects of voluntary exchange kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of economics, of course, learning about the Chicago side of things, and then learning about more so Austrian. And yeah, once you go Rothbard, it's kind of no turning around from that. So that was my introduction to that, and of course, that led into the activism aspect of it. And I never had been a heavy political guy. Again, it wasn't, though we had around this time, you had Ron Paul's more so first run, you had in 2008 and then going into 2012. But I was still so focused on what I could do in my individual capacity to try to get people to learn more so about what it is that I believe in. And so what I was doing at such a young age was music and whole band. A lot of people seem to forget that, you know, my band is going around Far From the Gods, a band that I fronted back in the Gap, and I had a song called both The Capitalist, we had a song called Secede, and it was flying over people's head at the time, of course, but these were all principles that I kind of stumbled across, and I thought was very important, so I was dropping those tidbits in that, and of course, when we started backwards, we were just full-blown libertarian, and we wasn't hiding it, certainly at all. And in doing so, I know that I have influenced more people than I ever would have giving some sort of lectures or whatever, because that's for like Scott, and that's for, I think even Dave, I put you in that aspect as well. You guys are way smarter than I am, definitely on the aspects of war. But there's a big, large demographic, and that's the focus of what I talk about for you guys that have heard me even speak at Mises events, is that I focus so much on culture, because that to me is what is going to be won, if there is to be one that is going to be won. Your average individual has no idea who their local representative is, and that's not to say that there's something, you know, that shouldn't be fixed, but it's more so to say that they, despite not knowing that, they know who Beyonce is. They can read you her lyrics back to fucking front. They know who their favorite artist is, and you might think it's so trivial, oh, they're stupid, they're actors. Who gives a damn? Well, these youngsters give a damn. So what I was doing was trying to plant a seed, and I used backwards as sort of my vehicle and music as my vehicle, and going into the comic books stuff. It's the same exact thing, using that as my vehicle to try to get the word out there, certainly of liberty, to people that otherwise would never hear it. The amount of people that have come to me after a backwards show and said, hey, I didn't know about this until I saw this video, you'd be surprised how many people actually say that type of stuff. So though the politics is certainly something that is very important, that I think there's a necessity for that. For you guys that are involved in various amounts of subcultures, I advise and I encourage that you use that also as your vehicle to get the message out there, certainly to other people. It's not trivial. I don't care if it's 3 people at your local fucking knitting club or whatever it is that you do. That can be certainly your vehicle, and I encourage that you certainly take advantage of that. Now, in doing so, I've gotten some criticisms on my hyper-emphasis, I guess that's what they like to say, on like the authoritarian left. And you guys need to understand, not you guys, it's more so the hate watchers, and maybe, I don't know if there's hate watchers here, maybe you're watching this after the fact, and I appreciate you nonetheless. But to all of those people that don't seem to understand that if you are involved, and I know I've had discussions with some of you guys talking about like the metalcore scene and how jacked up it is and how all of these guys seem to think one way. This is why we, for example, stuck out like a sore thumb, because we were just existing and not spreading this bullshit. That's all that it was. So again, it's so very, very important that that is used as a vehicle for you guys. And I get asked all the time by some of you, like, I want to get into this. And I say, just do it, man. What's the worst that can happen? You cannot maybe see a little success, but hell, the way that I see it, if I influence one person out of a venue with 500,000 people, that's good enough for me. If I can plant that seed to that one person, and maybe they don't get it right then and there. Maybe it doesn't even click for them 3 months. And they're like, hey, I remember this guy that was saying something, and when he was screaming his head off on stage. That's fine with me. And I think if that is your approach, not so much trying to strike big, localize it, make it unique to you, I think that can certainly be an important vehicle, certainly for all of you guys. But the next thing that I certainly want to discuss is what I alluded to before, and that I think a lot of people that are in this room, a lot of us that are big advocates on, let's say, this scene, have had to unfortunately deal with like some very egregious like accusations. And I want to be certainly the first one to say that shit ain't funny. When you go out there and you call someone or liken or kin, definitely someone like yourself, Dave, and they call you a Nazi or something, they giggle and they think the shit's funny. It's not fucking funny. It was never funny, and some of y'all are hearing that just because, let's say, you are in opposition to whatever the mainstream left certainly adopts. What you're dealing with regarding these weirdos that claim to be about liberty, that claim to be a part of the Libertarian Party, they're not libertarian. Let's just be completely honest. More than likely, they're just ashamed Democrats at best. Because for me, when I hear someone like Scott really, I mean, he digs into the quote-unquote right a lot. A lot of us don't clutch our pearls and faint on the couch because he started criticizing the folks on the right. But God forbid you're a libertarian and you're criticizing the quote-unquote left. I got folk that claim to be libertarian. You got folk that claim to be libertarian that are some of the staunchest just members of these little hot-minded groups that say some very, very ugly things. And it's sad that we have so many people that seem to be wanting to impress the left and be seen in the good graces of the left as opposed to actually advocating liberty. And that is a fundamental problem. Now, I don't think I certainly don't, should mince-for words for these types of people, because these are ugly, nasty, certainly disrespectful people. And you need to understand that you do not even owe these clowns an actual argument when they make such an egregious claim. I think that they should be mocked, shamed, and laughed at. I used to be that guy going back and forth with these weirdos on Facebook and like all of that. And there's some, trust me, there are still some guys that are members of the Libertarian Party that have said some things. And yeah, once you see me, we're going to have to exchange words. You're going to have to atone for that, certainly. But understand, and why I've kind of left that scene, is that your time is very valuable. And I mean, we're libertarians. We know exactly that. It's sort of the precious resource. And again, you do not certainly owe, and you shouldn't waste your time on some clown getting in an argument with them, trying to convince them that you're not whatever egregious thing it is that they claim. There's no reason to do that. They're arguing in bad faith. Tell them to shut up in the corner and move on. Now, a couple of the speakers also talked about what the talked about the lockdowns, right? That was such a big opportunity, which you thought libertarians should have hopped on the scene, and we should have been leading the charge on this conversation when you saw what was happening, even out here in Texas with that lame Greg Abbott. I wanted to call him something else. Y'all know that. I'm working on it, guys. I'm certainly working on my language. But of course, between the mandates and stuff that we had out here, yeah, we got over it, but never forget it did get to a point to where it was implemented. And instead of people at various places all around this country, actually libertarians leading the charge, you had some folk, you brought up Cato and all these sort of institutions that were trying to justify this. And that, to me, again, speaks to the fundamental problem that we have people that are advocating or claim to be advocates of libertarianism that don't actually know what a libertarian is. We probably had our greatest opportunity that we may not get again with what the government did in response to COVID, and it was botched. Not necessarily by the people that are in this room. You might have did everything it is that you could, but in large, folks weren't looking to the libertarians for the answers. That's a problem. And when you're going forward, whether it be how your habits are, whatever it is that you're doing, keep that in mind, that any event something else comes up, and we do get this opportunity again, make sure that you take advantage of that. Because, again, we're probably not going to get it like we did with COVID. It should be a damn crying shame. It should piss you off that we had such a great opportunity and it was completely botched. Nobody was listening. I won't say nobody was listening, but the country wasn't really looking to us for the answers, despite us actually having them. Now, I will say this, however. With the summer of love in 2020, there was a lot of opportunities there that I was able to certainly take advantage, and maybe some of you did, where you saw people going around destroying property of various cities. For what? You had something that was obviously a crying shame. We're all against. Again, we should have been leading the charge on this. Yet again, we allowed the authoritarian left to take charge on police brutality, which you would think would be a subject matter that's right up our alley. Shouldn't have allowed them to do it, yet they did. However, you saw a lot of people start to really pay attention to, I guess, to what some of us were saying, because what I believe, of course, is the core foundation, let's say, of libertarianism is property rights. And we had so many people, and it sucked. And this was a way that we could have been very critical of the police when they just sat there and watched as your cities got burned to the ground. They said, oh, well, the mayor or whatever told them to stand down. So the fuck what? I thought y'all said they was serving and protecting. So which one is it? So a lot of people got peeled, certainly on the police, on the conservative side, because of the summer of love. And not only were they, let's say, like, it wasn't that they were just co-signing this. You had the authoritarian left actively egging this on. People that are members of, let's say, the federal government were egging this on as they destroyed your cities. And keep in mind, and a lot of people seem to forget, this is right during this whole COVID situation. You had folks actually, as they locked you down, they were justifying all of these people marching en masse. They were justifying it. They were saying it was okay. I even read articles and studies by these hack sort of medical folk that were saying somehow those protests slowed the spread of COVID. Like, what the fuck? How the hell did that happen? But that was the argument that they were certainly making. And they were essentially spitting in the face of so many people. And that, again, was our advantage. And a lot of folks know, as announced, I had, right before that, really inked something up with Blaze TV. It's right around the corner. And, man, my eyes have been so open to, we brought up Glenn Beck, and him and I have so many conversations. I think he's actually a lot of people give him credit for. But to just get in front of people on a day-to-day to talk to them about liberty, because your average person, to Scott's point, doesn't even understand what the hell it is. They have no idea what libertarianism is. They look at it as a meme more so. Like they'll say the whole, oh, well, they're just Republicans that want to smoke weed and all this sort of. The fact that they can even control the conversation in that way really frustrates me. But they are they were very, very ripe for that conversation to be had because they watched what their government did in the summer of 2020 and throughout. I have to always remember that, yeah, we live in Texas, but there's still people in this country doing this mass stuff. That to me is, it's hard to get over, but you have to remember. There's a lot of people that live in these areas that call themselves conservative, but they're more responsive to this message than they probably ever certainly had been. And also when you deal with the whole election and how people felt about that, they were very, very ripe for this. And you could just plant a seed and like, oh, maybe this secession thing doesn't sound as bad. Maybe I don't want to share a government with clowns in California. And it was very effective. Yet I got a lot of slack, certainly from people calling themselves libertarians. Again, I think just leftists masquerading as such. Because I would dare to engage, and Dave, you speak about this so much, how important it is and how you will engage with essentially anybody. If we can find some issues that it is that we agree on, who says that we can't even coalition build in that regard? I'm not the biggest on building coalition, but on a single issue, if we can see eye to eye and I can get you on my side because you recognize something is wrong, what is up with that? And the reason why so many people have an issue with that, because they don't actually want to. They look at libertarianism as if it's like the cool kids club. It's like, oh, it's something I could brag about being about. You know, I'm not a Republican, not a Democrat, and you get these weirdos who think that libertarianism is centrism, which it's not. Why can't we lead with the ideas and telling people what it is that we advocate? Why can't we convert these people to be us instead of having to always meet these guys where they're at, trying to get them to embrace us and accept us? We should be leading the charge on these issues because keep in mind that we are right and they are wrong. Now, obviously, I focus on culture and entertainment. That's my big thing. You know, I mentioned comic books, and guys that watch my show or follow YouTube, you know that's something that I'm always hammering home, and it's awesome to see even people embrace, you'd be surprised, even decentralization in that aspect. I think what's going on with Disney right now is a great example of that. So many people are like, okay, maybe we shouldn't fund this mega corporate entity that is advocating things that are antithetical to what we actually believe in. And the unique thing about Disney is that they've drawn their line in the sand, and they're not playing around. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with there was that Reimagine Tomorrow, and you got even the CEO Bob Chapek talking about what they want to do to children. The fact that I didn't think that we were ever going to get to a point that they would actively be targeting children and people aren't trying to bare knuckle box over it. Is amazing, but it goes to show how fast this thing accelerated. But now more than ever, people are looking for alternatives. And still, I think this is an opportunity for a lot of us that value liberty. It's the sole reason why I wanted to start my comic book stuff. It's like, why not us? I mean, Disney wasn't always Disney. Why can't they, and looking at it from a, again, decentralization effort, why can't it be us? Why can't it be companies that, you know, actually adhere to these principles of private property rights and not necessarily using that to advocate some sort of political aspect, but more so just, I don't know, not hating your fucking customers. It's a very easy thing. I think it's very lucrative also. But that's what I'm attempting to do. It's not just about, yeah, I am a capitalist, don't get me wrong. I want to make all the damn money I can. I do. But on a serious note, we all know that there's no monopoly that's ever existed in the history of monopolies that didn't use the state to become one. So why not guys that value, let's say, these concepts of liberty that even infiltrate not just politics, but aspects of business as well? And so often people have told you, or maybe they told me certainly, I don't know about you guys, but that this stuff that we did was trivial. Who cares about this stuff? And I think that we have enough guys, no disrespect to our other speakers and people that really are just very educated on all of this stuff. But I think we have enough of those. We have Tom, we have all of these people that are very smart on any given issue, can just wrap a circle around anybody intellectually. We don't have much representation culturally, however. It's almost non-existent, to be fair. We have to always try to make these concessions because we're not there. And that's because we don't really see ourselves as alphas. Because we thought ideas alone were going to, of course, get us to a position where we see liberty in our lifetime. And as you're seeing, it's not good enough. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you just can't reason a person out of a position that they got to by way of emotion. It's impossible. Trust me, I've tried, man, I've tried. So it's not to say that you should be as, I don't know, aggressive as I am, cussing folk out and all that. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm just saying that each and every person in this room belongs to some subculture. I've met a lot of talented people along the way, a lot of people that I've hired. Some of these artists that I hired are fellow libertarians that, we agreed ideologically, of course. However, they were very talented at what it is that they do. Why couldn't I try to get all these guys together to try to come up with something that's competitive in the market? And I think we need more people doing that. It's not trivial. I promise you, you might not think that it's of influence, but just look at where we're at right now, entertainment-wise, where you can't get away from it. I can't turn on, damn Oreos is talking about this woke shit. What does that have to do with cookies? Nothing. But this is why it's important that we engage. It's important that we get out there and let our talents be known in the space of business and other things that are also outside of politics. So this last thing that I certainly want to bring up, with that being said, you have a lot of people who think that the trajectory that not only this country is, but this world is inevitable. Black pillars, if you will, who think that there's absolutely nothing they can do. I put them in the same, let's say, box that I place these leftists in, and that they should be mock-shamed and laughed at and set to the side. Do not allow these people to demoralize you. I know it sucks sometimes. You turn on the news and like, holy shit, man. Definitely this past summer, you talked about folks like intellectually and mentally just being in a very rough spot because of the lockdowns. That was a very evil thing, and what sucks more than anything, it seems like they're gonna get away with it. That's what sucks. However, do not allow that to demoralize you. I say this more as a white pill moment. You gotta understand that really the only types of people that we're dealing with are folks that just have perceived legitimacy, that's it. They don't have the ideas on their side. Certainly, they just have perceived legitimacy that people look to these guys, whether it be at these mega corporate entities that work with the government or essentially extensions of the state, whether it be the government in itself, they have a perceived legitimacy. So people think that what is has to be. And it's a very difficult thing to certainly break up. However, once that's ended, they have nothing. So I say this as a means to let you all know that we're going to win. It may not seem that way. I personally think that the pendulum is at minimum starting to slow down. A lot of people have woke up definitely with these last couple of years. But don't allow these folks to demoralize you. Get out there, be hardcore, unapologetic advocates of liberty. These people that think you have to water this message down, they're full of shit. They're just protecting the status quo. The message of liberty does not have to be watered down. You can be as unapologetic, you can be as principled, and yeah, you can make that, and I actually encourage you to do that. Tailor-make that message to, let's say, whatever subculture it is that you're involved in. But you don't have to water it down, not at all. But we are going to win. We may not be winning right now, but we are going to win. And I just want you guys to certainly keep your heads up. I know it's a lot more difficult for you guys that may have traveled out of state, that are in other areas. It can be very, very tough when you see that still this country is going with some of these jab mandates and all of this other nonsense. I know it can be very tough. But I need you to keep your heads up. I need you to get forward with a plan of action. We have a lot of people that are here that are in the political space doing everything it is that they can. Support them. Again, there's no such race that is trivial enough to just get involved. Just go out there and be great is all that I ask of you. That's it. So please support every individual that's here doing their thing, that is involved certainly in the political realm. It looks like you guys are gaining so much momentum every day. I'm seeing some tweet being shared by some person that's pissed off because you guys are gaining so much ground. Oh, they have so much power. It's like, yeah, that's the point. So keep it up. Of course, you got me certainly in your corner. I know it seems like I'm not as around because I focus so much on this entertainment stuff, but I love everything it is that you guys are doing, and big shout out to the Mises Caucus. Again, you guys are going to win.
One more time for Eric July. All right, guys, thanks for coming, and it's been a great time. No, for real, though. For all y'all who don't know, Dave Smith is probably my biggest hero in the Liberty movement right now, and this guy is amazing. Probably the best messenger we've had since Ron Paul. He is the host of Part of the Problem. He regularly goes on all sorts of mainstream, or as Michael Miles likes to call it, the corporate press. He's been on Rogan like what, 6 times? 7. Yeah, who's counting, right? So without further ado, the great Dave Smith.
Thank you guys so much. Oh, come on. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is fantastic. Hey, the Ron Paul revolution is stronger than it's ever been, man. How cool is that, huh? And thank you to all of our great speakers tonight. Of course, Clint Russell, the poorest-looking millionaire in the world, was up here. The great Scott Horton, everybody. Who, of course, I appreciate. Scott gave a speech that was only 1/76th as long as his typical speech that he gives. So he cut it down for us. And of course, one more time for Eric July. That was incredible. He really fits that stereotype, you know? He's just your typical black metal frontman, libertarian comic nerd. You know what I mean? Just a dime a dozen, those guys. But I appreciate everything everybody said, and I really loved Eric's message of the idea that we will win. And I got to tell you guys, man, I am so optimistic about what we're doing here. I am so excited for the future of the Libertarian Party. I think we have an incredible moment that we're going to be a part of right now, and particularly because of what the Mises Caucus is doing. You know, I know Michael Heiss started this thing in 2017. I joined in 2018. I believe Scott joined in 2019, I think the next year. It's only 2022. I mean, I remember just a few years ago when I would get in debates with people who were critics of the Mises Caucus, and they would laugh at us, and they used to say, you're going to lose all of the internal elections in the LP. You guys will never get control of this party. You'll never be in the driver's seat. Well, let me tell you, those people ain't saying that anymore. Yeah. The mic is, here, hold on, let me see. Maybe it's better if I hold it like that? Okay. We'll see. Maybe not. This is my first time with a microphone, so. But I will tell you, I am so excited about what the Libertarian Party can do in the very short future. And I think we have an incredible opportunity. And this opportunity is not so much because of our rich tradition of ideas and the legacy of this party, although we really do have both of those things. And I think that every day we should remember that. Every day that you're a member of this party, remember that this is the party of Ron Paul. This is the party of Harry Brown. We are the inheritors of that tradition, and it makes me proud to be a member of the Libertarian Party. But that is not why we have an incredible opportunity. The reason why we have such an incredible opportunity to really do something amazing here is for one simple reason, and it has nothing to do with anything that we've done. It is because every major institution in this country has been completely discredited. That's the truth. Trust has evaporated. Nobody respects the political class or the corporate media. Nobody respects Hollywood, and this is reflected all around you, whether it's the dwindling numbers of people who watch stupid things like the Oscars, unless, of course, Will Smith smacks the shit out of Chris Rock, and then we're like, all right, I'll check out the clip. But no one actually tunes into these things anymore. Nobody trusts CNN anymore, and nobody believes any of the political class in Washington, D.C. This is demonstrably true. And why is this? Why is it that the trust in all of the major institutions in America has completely disappeared? Well, it's for one very obvious reason, and that is that the 21st century has been an unmitigated disaster. And the people in the corporate press and the political class have been wrong about everything. And the old saying, you can fool some of the people some of the time. But, even Americans, as dumb as rocks as we can be sometimes, 22 years into the 21st century know that this whole thing is falling apart. I was born in '83. I'm also, like Clint, a child of the 90s, the late 80s and the 90s. And, I mean, the 90s weren't perfect. And I know people say it was the generation of peace and prosperity, but if you check out Scott's next 5-hour lecture, he will explain that it was not actually so peaceful. Like, not if you were in Kosovo or Iraq. But, But, man, the 90s do look pretty good compared to the 21st century. I know there's young people at every Mises Caucus event, and there's always young people, but let's just think about this for a second. What have the American people been handed by the ruling elite in the 21st century, which is now 22 years old? Well, we got 9/11, we got the war, the terror wars, we got the worst financial crash and worst economic recession since the Great Depression, we got the phony Obama recovery, we got the rise of woke insanity, which all led to what? The Donald Trump presidency. And by the last year of the Donald Trump presidency, we got 2020, the worst year for regular people in modern American history. And now we got Joe Biden. Could anyone look at that and spin that into like, things are going pretty good so far, I think. And the whole time, the corporate press has been wrong about everything. So just to go through this a little bit, okay? And I know when there are young people here, sometimes I have to start from this part in the story, and sometimes you guys don't even believe me. But for the people who are my age or older, back me up on this. This is true, okay? In the year 2000, George W. Bush becomes president. He won it fair and square when a bunch of Jews voted for Pat Buchanan. And now George W. Bush, believe it or not, I swear to God this is true, George W. Bush campaigned on a humble foreign policy. I know, there's always a few young people who go, I don't think that's right, but I'm telling you, this is right. This did actually happen. I was there, and I saw it. He campaigned on a humble foreign policy. He said that the military should never be used for nation building. It should only be used to defend the United States of America. And he railed against the big government policies of Bill Clinton and that he was going to bring fiscal sanity to Washington, D.C., to balance the budget and rein in all of this excess of government, and also to like bring back morality or something like that. No more blowjobs or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but so this is how the George W. Bush administration started. And in the year 2000, George W. Bush had a real problem on his hands. And the problem was that a bubble was bursting. And it was the dot-com bubble from the 90s. Because actually, Clinton's prosperity was kind of artificial, and the bill was coming due. And if George W. Bush had, some integrity or some intelligence, or had maybe once ever read a book, perhaps he would have been able to say, well, look, this is because of the bad policies in the 90s, and we have to feel this pain now, and something like that. But he didn't. And instead, what they did was Alan Greenspan, the then Fed chairman, brought interest rates way down low to avoid any of the pain of the dot-com bubble. They brought interest rates all the way down to 2%. Now, I know to some of you young people, that sounds like those are crazy high interest rates. But at the time, this was very crazy to bring the Fed fund rate down to 2%. Just to keep in mind, in 1980, to rein in the inflation of the 70s, the Fed fund rate hit 20%. Okay? Yeah, try raising the Fed fund rate to 20% today, and you would just hear the sound of shotguns blasting in the street. But this was what happened in America. Anyway, so the Fed fund rate comes down to 2%. But we're just keeping it there temporarily so we don't feel the pain of the dot-com bubble. And then in 2001, of course, there was 9/11, where a bunch of crazy Muslims hijacked these planes and flew them into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and we had never done nothing to them to provoke it. So for no reason, I don't care what Scott will tell you, they hated us for our freedom. As the story goes, that one day, Osama bin Laden was walking through the desert, and he stumbled on a copy of the Bill of Rights. And it just got him so mad that he was like, any of you guys want to blow, killing these people with all these freedom? And all his friends were like, absolutely. And so so 9/11, again, completely unprovoked. And then there was no raising interest rates. In fact, we brought them even lower because now we had to fight a war on terror, and now we were going to need to raise spending because obviously whenever there's a crisis in Washington, D.C., the answer is to raise spending. So no one feels any pain immediately. And this was fine. Worked out great. No problems. And then George W. Bush launched the war on terrorism. And as Scott will explain to you much better than I can, they could have trapped Osama bin Laden in Tora Bora toward the end of 2001, but they let him escape. And instead, they decided to fight a regime change war against the Taliban. And then, in 2003, they decided to fight a regime change war against Saddam Hussein. And both of these wars worked out great. Okay, they didn't so much. They went bad. But at least the interest rates were low, right? So we didn't have to feel any of the economic pain. I mean, there was no war tax. There was nothing that they were making the American people, except for the ones whose kids were bribed and propagandized to go fight these wars. No one else had to pay anything for it. So it seemed like, to most American people, this was kind of okay. And we're winning. And they kept telling us we were winning. Every month, every year, every quarter, they told the American people it's going great. Dick Cheney said the insurgency is in its final throes. And every time they said the army we're building up in Afghanistan is doing fantastic, and we're beating the Taliban back, and the war on terrorism is being won. That's what they kept telling the American people. And the whole time, interest rates stayed low. But this did have some other effects. When interest rates are low, a lot of people buy houses who wouldn't otherwise have bought those houses. Maybe even an adjustable rate mortgage. But who cares? Because housing prices are going up by 10%, 12% every year. So you'll make that money back until eventually interest rates had to go up. And this destroyed the entire economy. According to the Federal Reserve, between 2007 and 2010, the average net worth of the American people declined by 40%. 40% of the average working class person's net worth evaporated in those few short years. If you want to look around and wonder, why is this whole country spinning out of control? Why is everybody at each other's throats? Why are we so, it wasn't always like this. Why did it happen? Look no further than those years right there. That's the start of all of it. And of course, the country was completely fed up. By 2008, the Americans were completely over it. George W. Bush, who once, after 9/11, enjoyed the highest approval ratings of any president in American history, his approval ratings were in the garbage. Because what had he given us? 2 disastrous wars, the worst economy in nearly 100 years, not to mention other blunders like Katrina and just being an idiot. And the American people were so fed up that they would elect the most anti-George W. Bush candidate that was available to them. And who was that? Barack Hussein Obama, the constitutional lawyer who promised to return, the most progressive member of the Senate, as they used to call him, right? He promised to return the country to normalcy. He was going to restore the rule of law. He was going to close Guantanamo Bay and end the wars in Iraq, the war in Iraq, end the war in Afghanistan. This is what Obama ran on, and the American people said, okay, we'll go with this guy. And man, does he give a hell of a speech. And this is great, because also, on top, he's not retarded. And, we're pretty over having this retarded president, so we'll go with this guy. And so the country got all behind him. Obama, when he first got in, double-check me on this, I don't remember the exact approval ratings, but his approval ratings after he first won were up above 70%. Now, try to imagine a president today having a 70% plus approval rating. As much as they might say the country, is so racist or horrible or any of that, the truth is that the vast majority of Americans, after Obama got elected in 2008, were rooting for him. They wanted him to succeed. They wanted the country to be fixed. And so Obama led what they called the Obama recovery. So that 40% of wealth that was just stolen from the American people, don't worry about that because we had the Obama recovery. But of course, what was the Obama recovery? What was the answer? Well, you remember those 2% interest rates? We're bringing them down to 0. 0% interest rates for the first time in American history. And they held him there for, I think, 6-7 years, where money was free. Of course, that also has some unintended consequences. That might sound nice, right? You can get money for absolutely free. But while the American people are broke and extending loans is a risky business, how likely is a bank to extend a loan to a working class person when they collect no interest on it? Not very. But who do they extend it to? Big banks, big corporations, the people who are the least likely to default on the money, right? So all of this just fueled Wall Street speculation. It fueled the rich and powerful getting more money, buying up more of the economy. But also Obama jacked up government spending to the highest at the time, the highest levels it had ever been. And so that was the Obama recovery. It was artificially low interest rates and record high government spending. Record low interest rates, record high spending. And so what was the result of all of this? Well, all of the people on CNN and MSNBC were telling you, oh, the economy's recovering. Look at these graphs, look at the stock market, look at the unemployment numbers. What happened? Go look at a map of the richest counties in America. Where are they? Right outside of Washington, D.C., and then the others right outside New York City. That's it. It's the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and the suburbs of New York City. Now, that ain't capitalism. It's not like there are these big factories in Washington, D.C. producing all of our goods, and that's why all these people are making this money. What is it? It's the politically connected, those connected to the military-industrial complex. They're all in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And what are the suburbs of New York City? It's all stockbrokers. It's all the people who are gambling the American people's retirement funds in the Wall Street casino. So that is what set the table for Donald Trump. Not racism, not a rise in white nationalism. It was just what were there? Hundreds of counties that voted for Barack Obama that then flipped and voted for Donald Trump because they wanted the same thing that Obama promised them, that Trump promised them. It was that simple. Look, if you remove Donald Trump's dumbass comments and his stupid tweets and all of that, what was the core center of his promise? It was make America great again. What is that? He's saying the 21st century has sucked. We used to be great. We're not anymore. I'm going to make it great again, and I'm going to bring your jobs back. This is what won over former Obama voters, not some rise in Nazism. And so people went with Donald Trump. Now, one of the other facts, before I get into the Trump years, is that as Obama started failing on every one of his promises, the establishment got really spooked. And they got spooked by two things that happened in Obama's first term. There were two populist uprisings, one on the left and one on the right, that really spooked the establishment. One was the Tea Party, and the other was the Occupy movement. And they did not like those. If you want to get the attention of the ruling elite, stand outside big banks and yell, "We are the 99%. That makes them wake up a little bit to like, that could be a problem. And of course, that around the same time, the Tea Party was screaming about banker bailouts and deficits and taxes and the whole system being corrupt. So, right after that, coincidentally, all of a sudden, wokeism took hold. Now, critical race theory always existed. Critical theory was in the universities, but it was not in mainstream America the way it is today. And you can actually look at this if you look at like Nexus charts, where you can just map out the words that are used in major news publications. Like if you just look at the word racism and how many times it appears in the New York Times and the Washington Post, right around 2010, 2011, if you look at the chart, it's like, brr, like just skyrockets. Like it was all racism, because all of a sudden racism was so much worse than it was in the 60s in the year 2010, you know? In terms of like white supremacy and white privilege and gender identity. Go look at any of those terms in a Nexus chart. All of a sudden, the big corporations, Hollywood, they all started flooding the conversation with this stuff. And this is to throw people off of the scent, to get everyone fighting each other, instead of having an Occupy movement fighting against the big banks and a Tea Party movement fighting against big government. They'd rather have the people fighting each other over transgender bathrooms or something like that. So in comes Donald Trump, skip ahead to 2016. And Donald Trump is like, screw all this woke stuff, screw political correctness. This is about bringing your jobs back, making America great again. We're not fighting any of these stupid wars. And he was the biggest middle finger that the American people could give to the entire ruling elite who had ruined the 21st century. And don't get me wrong, a lot of Americans hated Donald Trump, but tens of millions were on board and voted for him. And what was the problem with Donald Trump? As Scott Horton likes to say, the country needed Ron Paul, but they got Donald Trump, who unfortunately, the problem with Donald Trump isn't what the left claims. It's not that he was like a Nazi, or that, he wasn't literally Hitler. He was just a bloviating, ignoramus narcissist who's never, forget George W. Bush, never read a book. He's never read an article about anything that he's talking about. He just all goes on gut, It's going to be terrific, trust me. It's just all that. But so think about this, right? The culmination of the first 16 years of the 21st century was the American people giving the biggest middle finger they could to the establishment. And in Donald Trump's last year, 2020, Americans are locked in their homes. 700,000 small businesses closed their doors permanently. Tens of millions of Americans kicked out of work on government assistance. Millions of children completely had their lives disrupted, some maybe never to recover. The biggest disaster in modern American history. That's what the American people got after they voted for the repudiation of the establishment. And of course, they got none of it. All of the terrible policies continued under Trump. And so this opened the door for the establishment to make a comeback. And they got this bright young kid to lead the charge. Joseph Biden. Joe Biden, the corporate press weekend at Bernied him over the finish line. They literally told the guy, stay in his basement while we just make the entire election about Trump. Trump wasn't even running against anyone. It was just Trump. And where's his opponent? And they were like, don't worry about that. Just like, do you like this guy? No, it's been a pretty bad year. Okay, then vote for whoever the other guy is. And now Joe Biden, who by the way was never that bright, but has clearly lost a step. He is the establishment's great comeback. So we're back to the establishment having control. And how's that going? Yeah. Where are Joe Biden's approval ratings right now? In the gutter. Only compared to Kamala Harris's approval ratings. Can anyone make Joe Biden's approval ratings look good? And so that's what we've got now. However, there's also a huge opportunity that's come here, which is that the American people are disillusioned with the entire system. And at the same time, as someone who was a child of the Ron Paul revolution, what was our biggest problem with Ron Paul? What was the biggest obstacle we faced? Well, the biggest obstacle we faced was that there was a complete blackout on Ron Paul. The corporate press wouldn't give him any attention. I mean, he would get 3 minutes in a debate and he would kick ass in those 3 minutes and he'd light up the internet, you know? But that's all we could get. And then, you know, the old thing Jon Stewart made that great whole compilation about, where they'd be like, Mitt Romney takes first place and knocks Michelle Bachmann down to third place. And he's like, behind who? And they're like, don't worry about second. But now, us libertarians, we don't really need the corporate press anymore. We don't. We can go on shows like the Joe Rogan Experience, which I've been on not 6, but 7 times, just to be clear. But we can go on a show that has 20 times as big an audience as the CNN show that day and speak for 3 hours uninterrupted. We don't need to squeeze our points in between commercial breaks. And you know, I'll still talk to a lot of people, and great people, you guys, who I love in the Libertarian Party, who will be like, man, if you run, we just need to get you in the presidential debates. And let me tell you, that is the wrong mindset to have. We don't need to beg to get into the presidential debates. I have a dream, to quote another great thinker. My vision for the Libertarian Party is that we get to a point where we are making so much noise, there is so much interest in what we're talking about, that they ask us to come to the, like, oh my God, your ratings will be so insane. Will you please come be a part of the presidential debates? And we tell them we will see if we can make it. That's... I can't promise you I'll hold the date. And that's what our attitude should be. We don't need any of that. We have our own opportunities right now. We can reach more people, and more people who are really open to what we have to say. Because if you haven't noticed, across the political spectrum right now, there is this huge revolt against the establishment. And contrary to what a lot of people think, it's not just on the right. It's obviously on the right wing, where people are really questioning, I mean, not even questioning, rejecting the neoconservative foreign policy, and really rejecting so much of the cultural, the cultural established order that's been given to them over the last, particularly 10 years, but really the last several decades. But it's also happening on the left. The problem is, as soon as they wake up, they get called the right wing too. Now, I was arguing with someone the other day about this. You got to admit that the right wing has gotten a lot better over the last 10 years, and the left wing has gotten way crazier. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by the left wing? I mean, how about Joe Rogan and Tim Pool and Glenn Greenwald and Aaron Mattei, and just rattle all these people off, and they go, well, those are all kind of right-wingers now. And we're like, yeah, well, if you define everyone getting better as right-winger, then yes, right-wingers are the only ones getting better. But the truth is that there's a lot of people who have woken up to this insanity. And of course, they're looking for everyone. They're looking for any type of leader they can. All of these alternative platforms are blowing up because at least they are criticizing the establishment. But what is it that the American people keep looking for that they can't find? It's us. It's liberty. The actual answers to what caused all of these problems. And that's our job, to step into that void and explain it to people. That actually libertarians were the ones who were telling you from the very beginning about the rise of the empire and the military-industrial complex, the rise of the spying apparatus and the national security state. We were the ones talking about devaluing the currency and government authoritarianism and the police state, which, by the way, the entire COVID regime would have been nothing more than if, maniacs dictating their orders into the thin air if it wasn't for the police state to enforce it. That's what all of this comes down to, that libertarians, the real libertarians, the serious tradition of ideas that we inherit, we had the answers to all of this. And now is the best time in my lifetime by far to actually explain this to the American people. And so we have this tremendous opportunity where we have the best opportunity to reach a lot of people, and they're the most captive of an audience that we could hope for. And at the same time, we have to understand what we're up against. And this really is no joke. Of course, as Scott and Clint both mentioned, I mean, this is really, I don't think we're going to go to nuclear war, but the threat of nuclear war is greater than it's ever been. This is no joke. And this whole COVID stuff over the last couple of years, although it is winding down a little bit, the ones holding on to it really seem to be like I was talking to Jake Shields, who's a UFC fighter and a very libertarian-minded person, and he was talking about how in San Francisco they still have the vaccine passport. Like you can't go to a restaurant unless you have proof of vaccination. And even New York and LA have given up on this. But San Francisco, it kind of reminds you of like Cuba hanging on to communism. Like they're like, no, we're still doing it. And you're like, everyone's given up on this. But look, aside from just the absurdity of it, think about what just happened in Canada just 2 months ago, where you had a real liberty movement, a populist, working class liberty movement, right? The trucker protests and all that, they were asking for nothing other than liberty. Their demands were very specific. What were their demands? End the mandates. That's it. There was no mincing words about what they really wanted. It wasn't like one of these movements where, it wasn't like the Black Lives Matter protests where it's like, well, we want an end to police brutality, but we also want an end to racism, and we also want equity, and we also want this. And it was very clear. End the mandates. That's it. That's all they wanted. And what was the response from the Canadian government? Urged by Joe Biden. It was to invoke unprecedented emergency powers to squash this movement, seize bank accounts with no due process. Now, this isn't, some third world country 4,000 miles away. This is Canada. So my point is this, right? This is the opportunity we have, and this is what we're up against. So what would you do if you had the greatest opportunity ever and you were up against the greatest threat ever? I'd say you'd fight like hell to make sure you take advantage of that opportunity. That's our job, all right? By the way, this is water. I know it really doesn't look like it, but I'm drinking liquid death water. So if we have the best opportunity we've ever had, and we're up against the greatest threat we've ever been up against, well then what is the role of libertarians here? And I would submit that what we need to focus on, particularly after Reno, when the Mises Caucus has an incredible day, as we're going to, or an incredible weekend, the mission immediately after that is to unite as many libertarians as we can behind this cause. No more infighting, no more sectarianism, no more tribalism. We all come together after Reno, and we are one group of liberty-minded people, just like in the Ron Paul Revolution, fighting against government authoritarianism. That's our next step, and I need everybody here to be involved in that. We love all libertarians, okay? Now, I want to say about kind of the infighting that's been going on with a lot of this stuff, right? And believe me, I completely agree with what Eric was saying before. I'm not like disagreeing with that. The people out there who call you all of the worst names in the book, who go around calling people Nazis and rapists and racists and all this, screw those people. But let's get real. There's like 12 of them. It's really not that important. If it wasn't for social media, we'd never know they existed. Okay, so forget those, but there are a lot of other people out there who are really good libertarians, who just maybe don't see things exactly the way we do, and it's our job to persuade them that we're really in this for the right reasons. So to kind of connect this to what Eric was talking about with a lot of these cultural issues, here's the thing. What the there are people out there who just call the Mises Caucus names that are being disingenuous, that are bad faith actors. We all know that that exists. But there are also other people out there who I think are actually good people who just don't get it. And what they don't understand is that what the Mises Caucus, I believe in large parts, like a large portion of the membership of this caucus, basically believes this, that we absolutely cannot couple libertarian principles with insane woke ideology. That is a disaster if we do that. There is no reason why the philosophy of peace and prosperity and civilization and private property rights and the non-aggression principle also needs to go, also has to be coupled to, and you should be really happy if your son wants to be your daughter. Feel however you feel about that last one, it has nothing to do with the first. And the idea of insisting that these things all must be joined together will kill our chance of having the mass movement that we can in this country. There is no reason for us to insist that you have to adopt the cultural norms of the progressive norms of the last decade, which were literally created to distract the American people over nonsense. There's no reason why we have to embrace those. You can reject all of that insanity, because that's exactly what it is. You can reject that and still believe in liberty and peace and tolerance and also respect for your fellow people. It does not mean you have to hate trans people if you don't think that 5-year-olds should be taught about gender fluidity. That is a false binary that is put on us by the establishment. I don't hate any group of people, but I do mock the woke orthodoxies. And I think that's how most of us feel. Now, I think there's a genuine confusion on the part of some groups of libertarians who think, and this is on us, Mises Caucus people, this is on us to make sure that they understand this. Because often, I think the Mises Caucus guys, particularly on social media, where, look, nobody's perfect. You know, sometimes I see, I won't say this in front of any other group, but you people, but sometimes I see Mises Caucus groups tweeting stuff, and I'm like, pull it back. But not pointing any fingers. Pretty sure we all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, but a lot of times the Mises Caucus guys will be mocking wokeism, and I think there are some decent libertarians in the middle who take that as, oh, so you're racist. So if you mock someone for saying, you know, we hate bigotry, and you're like, wow, so brave. And then they go, oh, so you love bigotry? But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that right now we're involved in a moment where there is a hysteria about calling everyone who wins an argument with a progressive racist. And we reject that. That doesn't mean we embrace racism. And one more time, as I say with all these speeches in front of the Mises Caucus, and I know I speak for all of you guys, and please, let me know. Be the first to let me know if I don't. We reject racism. We reject bigotry. We reject all forms of collectivism because we are individualist libertarians, period. That's what the Mises Caucus stands for. And I think we demonstrate that all of the time. But the thing is this, right? If you have the biggest opportunity that you've ever had, and you're facing the biggest threat that you've ever faced, and the establishment has inserted this woke ideology to distract people during this time, what should we say? Maybe we shouldn't sound exactly like CNN and embrace all of their woke ideology. Maybe we should sound radically different and actually stand up for what we believe in. That's the point. There's a whole camp in the Libertarian Party who seems to have this view. And this is, I think, what a lot of Mises Caucus people are talking about when they talk about the like red pill, blue pill distinction, which I know a lot of people don't like that terminology. I think it's somewhat useful, but I understand if you don't like it. But here's basically the divide. There's a whole bunch of good libertarians. Forget the people who are dishonest actors. We can forget them for a second. There's a bunch of good libertarians who basically have this attitude. Like, look, If the entire press calls you a bunch of bigot, racist, Nazi transphobes, then the American people are going to think we're a bunch of bigot, racist, Nazi transphobes. And you can kind of see where they're coming from. Like, you can understand why they would feel that way. But here's how I look at it. If we are ever to achieve any success, if we're ever to be a threat to the system at all, it is a guarantee that the corporate press will call us bigot, racist, Nazi, transphobes. So that's it. We can either accept that that's going to happen, or we can give up now. And I know that all of you, even the libertarians who are like, well, we have to make sure they don't ever call us that. If you ever achieve any success, guess what? They're going to call you that. And you'll be like, wait, me? But I'm not. It doesn't matter that you're not. That's the game. So it's on you to either decide right now, either we can tell the truth and accept all of the arrows that are going to come our way and laugh it off, because who cares? And luckily for us, all of these terms have completely lost their value. No one believes it anymore. You know, when they were going after Joe Rogan, let me rephrase that. When they were going after my close friend, Joe Rogan, recently, but they were going after him for being a racist. And the whole thing was that instead of saying the N-word, he uttered the word. That was like the whole controversy. No one believes Joe Rogan's a racist. No one. No one who knows him thinks that. No one who listens to him thinks that. None of the people going after him think that. None of the people who see the people going after him think that they think that. The whole thing is like a game. No one believes these terms anymore. They don't. Here's how ridiculous the whole thing is. Someone the other day on Twitter called me, and I swear to God, this is what they called me. They called me a racist Nazi. Now, when you have to preface Nazi with racist, you don't believe what you're saying. If someone is a Nazi, we have passed racist long ago. That should just be assumed. Like, you're a genocidal maniac jerk. You know, this is all a performative game. And so what we need to do right now in this moment is kind of accept that it's a new paradigm that we're entering, where people are waking up to this thing. People need real answers. We have those real answers. The names that they're going to call you, it's much easier to laugh off. It's not like being called a racist in the 90s, where that kind of meant something. Now you can kind of laugh that off, and you can just tell the truth. And we don't, the truth is that we are the Mises Caucus. We are the continuation of the Ron Paul revolution. What we stand for is not any of the social distractions. What we stand for is talking about the issues that are plaguing the American people, that are destroying this country, namely the empire, the military-industrial complex, the COVID regime, the destruction of our currency, the militarization of the police, the mass incarceration state, the bureaucratic cartelization of the economy, and the corporate welfare. That's what we're focused on. And if we focus on those issues, we really can, after Reno, unite libertarians around a common cause. That's how Ron Paul did it, is that it was about the issues that he stood for. And they were so important, and he was so good on all those issues, that it brought everybody together. So I think that's the blueprint going forward, to be all about being right on the most important issues, and that's what libertarians can unite around. And I got to tell you guys, I am so excited for Reno next month. I am so excited for what the Libertarian Party is going to look like after this. And for us to do this, the most important thing right now is to elect Angela McArdle as the next LNC chair. That's the entire mission right now. That's really the most important thing to keep this all going. Angela, if you don't know her personally, she's incredible. She is brilliant. She is incredibly organized. She has the energy of the gods. So I don't know if you guys have ever worked with Angela McArdle before, but she's like got notes about everything. Like I'm like, like meet me in the hotel lobby for breakfast, and she's like got like the breakfast items listed out on her sheet. She is going to be a force once she's the chair of the LNC, and I can't wait for that. And the most important thing right now is for us to get as many delegates to Reno as possible. So please, if you're not already a delegate, go talk to one of the organizers at the end of this. That's the most important thing. We can still sign up more delegates right now. Make sure, talk to one of these guys and find out whether or not you can be eligible, because a lot more people can be, I believe we can present them tomorrow as delegates. That's the most important part of this mission. And this is going to be, by the way, while we're on this mission that is so important and so meaningful, we're also just going to have a ton of fun. We're going to have beers with each other and laugh with each other and meet lots of other great people. And if nothing else, we're going to all go down together. I got a little girl and a little boy. And that's really what motivates me to be a part of this more than anything else. The example I want to set for my kids. What we're up against is daunting. This is quite a challenge. But I'll be damned if my little girl and my little boy don't grow up knowing that I fought for what I believed in and gave it everything I had. I say this everywhere I go, and I know I get people who come up and thank me for what I do because I host a silly podcast. But I, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you guys for being here today. I'm inspired by what you guys do. I know you guys do hard work. I know that it's not always fun and rewarding. I know that it's sometimes a little monotonous to go vote on a resolution to amend the amendment to the previous resolution, or whatever the hell is going to happen tomorrow. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for being a part of this. I really believe that we are about to be a part of something great and meaningful and amazing. So thank you guys so much for coming out today. Long live the Mises Caucus.
Come on, we can do better than that. One more time. Dave Smith, everybody. Libertarian Tupac. So, we got the bar for another hour, which means we're about to party it up, fellas and ladies and everybody else. LP Texas gets 72 delegate spots and 72 alternates. 74. Why do I always get that number wrong? What'd you ask? Why are you heckling me? Anyways, 74 delegate spots and 74 alternate spots. And even if you're an alternate, you need to go to Reno, which means make plans. And I think only, 104 people have signed up to be delegates. So there are alternate spots up for grabs. So if you have not already come and talked to Patrick Mitchell, as soon as we get done here, you need to go talk to Patrick Mitchell. I repeat, come talk to Patrick about being a delegate. If you did not already sign up to do so, and we will move to add you to our delegate list. Again, you need to be a registered voter. And you need to be affiliated with the state party. If you don't know what that means, come talk to Patrick Mitchell, please. Again, what do? Talk to Patrick Mitchell. Awesome. You guys are fantastic. You helped make this happen. By showing up today, you are taking the first step to taking human action. So please, go sign up at takehumanaction.com if you have not already done so, if you want to get involved with the Mises Caucus here in Texas, and we will be sending you an email. Check your spam. It might go to spam, so sorry. But please, check that, because we send those emails out every week for people who sign up on there, and we want you to contribute in whatever way that you have, whether you are somebody who likes to make phone calls, or somebody who likes to organize, or somebody who likes to raise money, whatever your skill set is, we need you to take human action today, because I promise you, Dave's not going to say it, but he's going to run for fucking president. And when he does, we need you to be our front line, because I promise you, the duopoly is going to work their ass off to try and get some schmuck elected in 2024, and that is unacceptable, especially what we've seen for the past however many years. I mean, I've been voting since 2012, and it's been nothing but a disappointment. So, let's do this shit. Thanks for everybody for being here. Let's go get a drink.